I appreciate that. So it's my job to keep you awake after lunch. I'll try and do my best. And I saw I was at the same time as Matthew, who literally wrote the book. So I appreciate people coming here. I did have visions of it being empty and everyone upstairs. So measuring your platform engineering impact, it's a topic which I've been working on a lot over the last year. And really, it's about measuring platform engineering impact to non-platform engineers. Like, we know that platform engineers can appreciate the value of the things we build, but we need to be able to articulate that value to other people inside your organization. Another talk title I was thinking about for this one would be like how I foolishly alienated most of the non-platform engineers in my life by blathering on with lots of jargon about developer platforms and implementation details, etc., but it wouldn't quite fit on the slide. But joking aside, like, it is a hard topic to describe. I'm sure many of you have tried to articulate the benefits of platform engineering in your roles. To wake you up, etc., I was going to get you to do some exercise, but I'm not going to do that. But I will ask you to raise your hands. So how many people in the audience would consider themselves to be a platform engineer, just so I can tailor it? So not too many, maybe about a third. What about an application engineer? So someone building the business product. So a few of those. What other roles do we have? Do we have people from security or like project management? Yep, quite a few of those. So I'm going to pretend that I know how to talk to people that in different roles, etc. So if you're in that role and you want to give me some more insight after the talk, like, come and tell me how I've done it wrong. So I really believe that platform engineering is the way we scale DevOps. Right? So that's what I've been working on over the last 5 years of my career. And depending on like where your organization is at, you might have gone through many transformations already, and you could have reduced the silos. But in practice, certainly in my experience, we are still asking application engineers to think about too much, to do too much. And there's an example which I often go back to about 5 years ago. I joined a team that had gone through a cloud transformation. So they'd moved from on-prem, they were in the cloud, they'd gone to Google, and the infrastructure interface that they'd been given was a cloud account. Or more accurately, they had 3 cloud accounts. They had one for dev, they had one for UAT, and they had one for prod. So what proportion of time do you think those application engineers spent on actually building business logic? I know we've seen like stats come up in the previous talk in this track. I think they said 35%. That would be lucky, I think. We're writing Terraform, we're writing Pulumi, we're setting up cloud IAM, we're setting up databases. We barely even get to the code. Then we have to work out how to deploy a container. And does anyone know how many ways there is to deploy a container on GCP? I don't, and I've worked on it for years, but it's certainly a lot. And AWS has even more. So really, platform engineering is how we get application engineers actually building applications. So I've structured the talk in 3 sections. So first, I'm going to go through the types of stakeholders that platform engineering need to communicate with and how to talk to those people. I'm then going to go through a library of needles. And it's about measuring the impact of platform engineering. I'm not suggesting you go and take all of those needles and measure everything, but they're just to give you ideas for what to measure. And then to make the whole thing way less abstract, I'm going to go through a worked example. I'm going to talk about my 2 favorite platform engineering features to deliver and how I would articulate the benefit of those features to the different stakeholders inside your organization. So I'm going to start off with a definition of platform engineering that really resonates with me. So I think the goal of platform engineering is to enable change at speed with security built in, hopefully while maintaining or increasing reliability. And I prefer this definition of platform engineering over more I'm building self-service capabilities to enable developers to be productive, etc., because it tells us why we do platform engineering rather than the current what of platform engineering. Because the what is always going to change, but we're always trying to achieve the same thing, or at least I think we'll be trying to achieve this, a few years from now. The other reason I like that definition of platform engineering is it holds me accountable. I am like most engineers that I can go down rabbit holes. I can get really deep into one technical feature of a platform and forget why I'm doing it. So if we see ourselves as, the agents of change as platform engineers, then we should always know how the thing that we're building is either going to increase the speed at which this company can deliver software, it's going to make a measurable improvement to security, or it's going to improve reliability. So this is one of the problem statements that I started with when I thought I wanted to do a talk on this topic and produce things on this topic. So many platform engineering teams are delivering great platforms while struggling to maintain their existence. I was in the previous talk and they quantified that. For me, it was just an anecdote of my experience. And they quoted an article to say that 45% of platform teams had been disbanded or restructured. Was it within 12 or 18 months? It was something like that, which is pretty scary, isn't it? So if this resonates with you, you start a platform build, you feel like you've done a good job, but then the value remains invisible to leadership. And I think sometimes that's because of how the platform engineering initiative started. So most of the big platform projects that I've worked on, we didn't start out to say we're going to adopt platform engineering. It didn't quite have the same hype as, say, as DevOps, like going through our industry. What it probably started with was a cloud migration, or moving from VM to the cloud, or one cloud to another. Or you had an existing platform which was going to be end of life, and suddenly they realized there's nowhere to run our applications. Or perhaps there's a big important insurance system, and suddenly the vendor's going to start giving you containers rather than VM images, and you need somewhere to deploy them. So you get the initial funding. But then when you come to the end of that initial funding, if we want to keep our platform engineering initiative going, because we think it has value for the business, we need to be able to articulate the value. And that's in everyone's interest. Has anyone had problems where you can't get the budget to put the right salary on roles, so you can't hire the people you want to hire? That's the type of things I want to avoid when I'm running a platform engineering department. Hopefully I've already answered this then. So why do platform engineers talk to everyone? And I think it's because platform engineering's job is to bring everyone together to actually deliver change to production. So this is my fictitious, vague organization, but, yours could look a little bit like this. So the types of people that we're going to have to interact with as platform engineers are head of engineerings. So here I'm meaning the product engineers, so the people who actually build the business product, the person that reports to. QA could be separate depending where you're at in your transformation. We've got change management, we've got infrastructure teams, we've got probably multiple security teams. And one of the first things I would look at when trying to decide to do any kind of platform engineering is how does a change get to production? And I'm going to go through an example of some of the worst case scenarios that I've seen. So we have an idea, you have an engineering team, they build it, and they're dev complete. If we've got an organizational structure, which then means that change needs to be passed to, say, a QA team, that we're already on day 2. And then maybe we need to pass that change through to a performance testing team because it's touching a key service that the business needs to make sure works at a certain scale. And then that's the point that we start to introduce security. Perhaps we need to check whether a new perf test needs to be run, or we've brought in new versions of libraries and we need to check vulnerabilities. So obviously this is a worst case scenario, and hopefully it's very obvious when you lay it out like this that no technology can fix this. This is about talking to people and having organizational change. So there we go. They're the stakeholders of platform engineering, and we need to go and talk to them, understand their varied perspectives, and then work out what makes them tick. What does success mean for people in security? What does success mean for people in project management, in change management? And I always need to remind myself to always frame those discussions based on the person I'm talking to and not the solution that I want to implement. And this is a post-it note that I have on my monitor for remote meetings, or it's something I read out to myself 5 times before going to an in-person meeting, which is avoid at all costs discussing your solutions with stakeholders. They do not care about your solutions. They care about their problems. So let's try to understand them. I've generalized some of the titles to mean, senior leadership, exec. So let's just go through some of the things that they care about. So anybody in senior leadership it is, well, we actually saw a talk earlier today where they said they did have a senior leadership come in and introduce platform engineering. I would say that's pretty rare. Most senior leadership, we should not be using our platform engineering jargon to. It should just be about business velocity, competitive risk, return on investment, and really they just want to launch products quicker or change their existing, add features to their existing products more quickly. Head of engineering, this is a very varied role, but I'm just talking about the people who your product engineers report to. One of their biggest problems is normally maintaining a large set of engineers. They want to hire engineers. They care about predictable delivery. They care about quality. And, if I just pick one metric, which is useful for them, it's what proportion of their time is actually spent on product engineering rather than all of the other things. Now, we know as platform engineers, that probably means that they want things like frictionless infrastructure and fast onboarding. Security. There's lots of different security roles within most organizations, and they care about lots of different things. So you need to get to know your key people in security. But they generally care about coverage and speed of remediation and endpoint protection and vulnerabilities. And they generally want to be involved early in the process, not at the end, like I showed earlier on. And we want to see the security posture improve over time. Sorry, I do like everyone over here, but they asked me to look towards the camera, so don't be offended if you're on this side. Then we've got change management. And I truly believe that platform engineering can make change management the best part of your engineering organization and make every engineer love change management, because they care about safe, predictable change to production. They want to reduce lead times. They want to have better evidence. And I think some of the platform features I'm going to talk about later mean that change management can focus on the risky changes. So when you're invited to your favorite cab meeting, then you're talking about actually hard, risky changes to production. You're not just rubber stamping the other 100 changes that are going to be fine to release. Then we've got whoever's responsible for actually building the platform. So you probably are this person, or it's your boss, so you probably do understand this person. So they care about adoption and consistency and operational excellence. And I hope the main thing they want is to provide features that are used by development teams, but it's not always the case. So I'm an engineer by heart, by default. I am not a natural communicator, and I would be much happier writing code, building platform features. So the only way that I can improve the way I communicate with these people is to systematize it. So, I don't open up the thing I'm about to show you in front of them, but I definitely read it before I go and talk to them. So before we talk about our solutions, the first step is to make them aware of the problem. Like, they might not be aware of the problem. They probably don't know that platform engineering exists. So when we start to talk to people in change management and security, all we're really trying to do is build awareness. So let's take the example of, Trevor from security. Is he actually aware that every team uses a different registry and they've launched their own artifactory and then any image can go to production? Are they actually aware that everyone uses an ad hoc, non-standardized path to production? We need to make sure we understand their problem and what keeps them up at night. So you want them to surface their problems, and then we're going to bucket it into a set of categories, because really there's a fairly fixed set of things that we try to improve as platform engineering. So if you imagine Trevor from security, he might really care about low tool adoption, or they might care about vulnerabilities without ownership, in CMDB. Now, having a problem statement isn't good enough. I think the next step is then to quantify the problem. So we would get Trevor to tell us, or we would go and research ourselves, how many assets are there with vulnerabilities that don't have ownership in CMDB. So in this example going forward, we'd have turned that into, say, 200 assets without ownership inside CMDB. So now we know the problem. We know that our stakeholder is aware of the problem, but we need to show them some proof that this problem is actually solvable. And there's two types of proof in my experience. There's external proof and there's internal proof. So external proof would be, sending some articles or some links to Trevor about how other organizations have solved this problem. But I'm sure you're going to resonate a bit with this, is just because something is solvable at a different organization, you often don't believe that it's solvable inside your organization. So lots of people think theirs is different, it's more complex, and that could be the case. So the other type of proof is short internal POCs. And this example, and this is a real example, where we would do a quick POC, look at all the running containers in a certain environment, look at the labels, produce a report to say, this is all of the vulnerabilities. We can actually work out in an automated way who owns them. It's not in CMDB yet, but this is the type of thing we could automate. So that's where you show the proof that's actually relevant for your organization and your technology stack. At that point, hopefully Trevor loves you and is your best friend, and that's the point where you can agree on a measure of success over a fixed time period. So at that point, we might get Trevor to agree that we're going to try and reduce, from 200 assets to 50 assets, without ownership in 4 weeks, and that's the point at which you can get commitment. And at that point, it becomes our initiative. Right? The burden of platform engineering is often you're the person going around and talking to everybody, and it feels like it's all on you. But once we've gone through this process with some key stakeholders, then it's really mine and Trevor's initiative now. We're trying to get the vulnerabilities down. We're going to implement it with some platform engineering features, which I'll talk about later, but it's now their initiative. I'd like to also show you the system that I used, a year ago, and it was just this. So rather than go through all of that discussion, I just try and pitch the solution right away, and Trevor would not care, right? So it takes time to go through these conversations with people. I'm not imagining that to be a 1-hour call. That could be over the case of many weeks as you build up trust. That was one example, but obviously you have to think about all of the different examples of all the discussions that you're going to have with all of the different stakeholders. But I'd say most things in platform engineering really try to solve one of 4 problems at a high level. They're either trying to improve speed, reliability on performance, security, or cost. And really that's it. And I'm going to go into a library of examples of things that we might want to measure in each of these categories. And just to remind you, I'm not suggesting that you measure all of these things. This is just a toolkit which I would use to work out what to measure. And then we'll go into a specific example of actually picking 4 things over a short time period. A realization which I had fairly recently is we sometimes try and measure too much. I mean, I think that's obvious in engineering sometimes. But measurement should have a hierarchy, because at the top level, there's things which senior business leadership and head ofs care about, and then there's things which your more middle tech management care about, and then there's lower level things that you can measure to try and affect change in that. And I think engineers love drawing pyramids, but I didn't have time to draw a pyramid, but I'll show you what I mean. So at the top level for speed, there are more, but really it's things like product launch time or the number of user-facing features I can release. Now, how would I, as a platform engineer, try and go and achieve those things? Well, that's where the mid-level metrics come in my opinion. So we want things from DORA, like lead time and deployment frequency. And then we've got things from space, which came on from DORA for how long it takes to onboard people. So some key metrics which you might want to measure would be how long does it take for an engineer to join a team and get a change to go to production? Or you might care about if you're decomposing your architecture into multiple microservices, you probably care a lot about how long it takes to launch a new service. So that is, I need a new service. How long does it take to get the environments and the pipeline and my first production deployment? To affect change at the middle layer, you might have lower level metrics, which aren't the definition of success. What they are is your theory on how to move the metrics above. So to improve the lead time, you might need to remove manual actions, get rid of manual approvals for small changes, And then we're just going to go through each of the categories to give you some ideas of the types of things that you can measure. So at the top level for cost, it really is just total cost of ownership. How much does this product actually cost me to run? Not how much the platform is, not how much the infrastructure is, not how much service A, B, and C are. That's just extra details for people who just want to know how much the whole thing costs. At the mid layer, if I was trying to reduce that, then I'm definitely interested in, say, the service cost, or probably something more business specific, like how much does each customer cost me? So then I can know whether the actual business makes sense. Am I spending more than I'm actually making? And then even at a more granular level, it might be cost per user journey across a set of services. Now, if I was tasked and someone had the problem that the product was too expensive to run, so we couldn't keep doing it as a business, then I would get down to the lower level metrics. How do I actually achieve that? Well, I probably want to look at key services and reduce the storage costs or their application costs. And that's where my platform engineering implementation would kick in. We've got the same for reliability. So at the exec high level, we really just care about things like product uptime. But as I say, there's no point being up 99.9% of the time if the 0.1% of the time is your key business event, like you're streaming the Premier League football game at Sunday. So, things like outages during key events might be more important for you, and things like SLA breaches. Underneath, we go to the mid-level, and that's where I might look at individual services, defining SLO processes, providing tooling for SLOs and SLIs for all the various teams. But we need to make sure that bubbles up to the top level. One level lower, so working directly with application engineers and platform engineers, the type of thing which I'd actually measure to improve those things might be for key business use cases. What's our functional test coverage for business use cases? Do we have non-functional tests? Do we have reliability tests for key components? But we can do that and we can improve that, but we need to make sure it bubbles up. And you get the picture. We've got ones for security as well. So I've got about 9 minutes left, so let's go through a concrete example. So, product releases have slowed down, execs are complaining, and they're falling behind their competitors. The development teams have tried to speed up, reliability has suffered, and there's an increasing number of vulnerabilities in production. Or as I like to say, the typical day of a platform engineer. Before we go and have the discussions with all of the key stakeholders, I would do some diagnosis, so you can come with information and provide value in those initial conversations. So if you went and looked at this product, at this technology stack, we might find out things like there's a manually provisioned environments for key services, which is leading to differences between dev and production, so that we're having issues in production that we can't recreate in dev. We found out that dev teams are skipping automated functional and non-functional testing. When we dig into why, we find out it's because they don't have an appropriate set of ephemeral, lightweight environments. And we're finding out that the security are having to go to each engineering team individually to implement the security standards rather than having a consolidated approach. So, with my platform engineer hat on, I know the solution, so I can jump directly to the solution. We've seen this before. It's exactly the type of features which we build into the developer platforms. Well, I want a standardized, consolidated path to production for key services, and I want that path to production to make use of consistent, lightweight environments which are automatically created and are consistent. No problem. All we've got to do is go and convince everyone that that's the right solution. If those kind of ideas are new to you, so this is an example of what a consolidated path to production looks like that I might try and agree across a set of stakeholders. So we're not trying to put everything inside the path to production. We're just trying to put some key steps. So the key steps, in this example are we have a build step that produces an immutable versioned artifact, which is then promoted through a set of environments. We agree the testing stages that we need for continuous delivery to be able to release components. In this example, it is stubbed functional testing and non-functional testing. And then if they pass, we go to integration testing. That's our fast feedback cycle, our continuous integration. That might be 15 minutes. Our platform might even, put metrics around how long does this take for various components. Then we jump onto an extended test phase. So if you're a business that cares about performance, reliability, and you need to make sure the system's still working for 1 million concurrent users, we can do that once a day, and then we can promote to production. So this is an idea of what a standardized path to production might look like for someone targeting a lead time of 1 day for a change. From a great standardized path to production always comes the requirement that we need environments to do the stuff in, right? So if you have a path to production, and we're going to do all of these types of testing, well, we typically need environments to do that in. And then there's the concept of infrastructure environments. So me as a platform engineer, I've probably got long-lived multi-tenant Kubernetes clusters where everything runs. And then on top of that, as I onboard an application, then I would create lightweight environments for those applications. This is how we get service onboarding down, from 2 weeks to 1 hour. Many implementations of how you do this, a common one would be namespaces in a Kubernetes cluster. But we're not going to go around and try and tell the head of security that's our solution. We're not going to go around and tell change management that that's what we're going to do. We're going to go and talk to them. So going through that framework that I discussed before, we talk to the senior leadership. We kind of know the problem statement, but we'd want to quantify it. So we go from it's slow to features are delivered once a month. We're going to make that every 2 weeks. We go to change management and we find out their problems is they don't currently have trust in the evidence attached to change requests. And, we quantified that to say 95% of it is manual. And there'd been some instances of someone copying and pasting, evidence across change requests, heaven forbid. And then we go to security, and we turn that whole vulnerabilities are grown, quantify it. Okay, there's actually 35 vulnerabilities in the key services for our major business products. We go to head of engineering. They're just feeling like their engineers are struggling to get stuff done. And then we find out, okay, service onboarding is 2 weeks. PRs take 3 days to on average to merge. I've skipped out the evidence, the proof step, but I'll just give like one example. Change management. We could very quickly do a POC, which gathered, version control history, test reports, put that together and said, would you like this to be in each of the change requests where you can click in the links and actually see the things that have happened before this change gets promoted to production? And you have to think about the way you can do proof for each of your stakeholders. Then we look at our needle library and we go through and we decide like what the measurable definition of success is for this time period. So we pick the user feature requests. We're going to get that from 1 month to 2 weeks. We then go down a level and we say to do that, well, those user features are actually made up of these 4 components which always need to change, or 3 components in this example. So the goal of this initiative is to reduce lead time from 1 week to 1 day for these 3 services. I know how to do it. It's a standardized path to production with environments, but we're not talking about that. We're just talking about how we're going to measure the success. We're going to reduce our vulnerabilities from 35 to 5, and we're going to reduce service onboarding from 2 weeks to 1 hour. And there's a whole host of doing lower level ones, but I'll skip through those. And the real solution is carrots. All right. I probably don't have time for my funny story that's probably not funny, but we opened an office in Cyprus, my company, and we were hiring people from a software engineering background and an infrastructure background rather than a platform engineering background. So we created some training, we created some internal training for platform engineering, and all over it was talking about the carrots for various stakeholders, etc. And maybe people came from cultures of like not having psychological safety, so they didn't ask like, what is this carrot? Because the whole carrot stick thing was not a thing over there. So for a while they just thought I was the crazy British guy who liked to talk about carrots. But we can think about some of the carrots involved in this in this system. Change management, get automated evidence collection. Security, get visibility into vulnerability ownership because everyone's coming in through that service. Onboarding, execs get increased feature delivery. Head of engineering gets service onboarding reduction. And I think it's really useful for me as a platform engineer because if you go through this process, stakeholder-specific insights inform platform engineers why they're doing the thing they're doing. I've for a long time understood the technical merits of some of the platform features I build, but not really why it matters to other people in the organization. And the thing I didn't really expect is it changes the product that you build. So the hardest thing in platform engineering, or at least I think the hardest thing in platform engineering, apart from talking to people, is deciding what to do in what order. Like even that feature that we build, environments as a service, pipelines as a service, I could mock up a version of that in 1 week, done. I could also spend 12 months with a team of 10 people if I included every single feature that I could imagine inside that standardized path to production and environments as a service. So when you actually think of it through the eyes of your stakeholder, it tells you which bit to build in what order. So to kind of wrap up, the goal isn't to measure everything. It's to measure the right things, to show the value of the platform features that you build to key people. Obviously, the funding people, but really you need everyone. You don't want people to be blocking the things that you're trying to do. I think measurement, for me, is the best way to translate value to someone, because if I just start talking, I'm probably just going to bore them and they're going to stop listening, so numbers make sense to me. Accountability. As I said, it's very easy for platform engineers to get, into the details and forgetting about why they're doing the thing they're doing. And always start simple. Pick a key business use case. Find out what components are involved, and whatever initiative that you're doing, just make sure it shows some value for those key user journeys. And I'll leave you with don't talk about platform features. Just show the right measurement moving based on the person's role. I am very happy to talk about this topic at depth, so feel free to come to talk to me during the rest of the conference. If you want to connect to me after, there's a QR code for my LinkedIn, so feel free to message me. As long as you don't have the phrase recruiter in your title, I'm going to accept it. And we've recently written some nice articles, or what I think are nice articles, on our website. If you want to read those, then there's a QR code there that you can go and read some articles on this topic. So thank you for taking the time to listen and not going to Matthew's talk. Brilliant. Cheers.